Welcome to the Ivan Herrera Show. We are entering week 12. It's a very important time as we get ready for the playoffs. And if you're looking to make some moves, I'm going to give you 4 players that can make the difference in your fantasy lineups. Now, these players that I'm going to be sharing, you can either pursue them in either Dynasty or in the redraft. All of them are good options in either format. And the first one that we're going to get into is going to be Rhamondre Stevenson from the New England Patriots. Thus far, he's actually been the RB25 on a points per game basis, averaging 13.8 fantasy points. And I know that the efficiency hasn't been great, but the volume is what I'm most intrigued about. And look at this volume. Currently right now, he has been very steady. He actually is 14th among running backs in carries. He's 14th in targets and also 4th in red zone targets. And if you look over here too, he's had 9 games with double-digit touches. 5 of those games, he's had 20 plus touches. And if you don't know, touches is when you combine the carries as well as the targets that he gets in the passing game. And he has a very favorable schedule as well. He's going to be facing a stretch of really good defenses as far as how you should be matching up in fantasy. He is going to be facing Miami, who allows the 9th most points to opposing running backs. He then faces Indianapolis, who allows the 13th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Then you have Arizona with the 8th most. And then you have Buffalo that allows the 4th most points to opposing running backs. And then here, if you look at this, Buffalo, Indianapolis, and Arizona are also top 10 in most receiving yards allowed to opposing running backs, which is good because that fits really well into the game of Rhamondre Stevenson. After you get Rhamondre Stevenson, you're going to want to make a pivot and get also wide receiver rookie McConkey. And what's been really impressive about McConkey is we knew he was going to be potentially the wide receiver 1 in this Los Angeles offense. Currently, he's the wide receiver 17, averaging 12.9 fantasy points per game. Since the bye week in week 5, he's actually had 5 games in the last 6 with 6 plus targets or more. So he's been seeing a lot of good steady volume. And last week, even on Sunday Night Football, he had a career high 9 targets as well as a career high 123 receiving yards. He's also 6th among all wide receivers in slot snaps. And the reason why this is important is because he's facing the Baltimore Ravens. And not only are they the worst defense as far as the amount of touchdowns, receiving yards, and receptions that they allow to the opposing wide receivers, but they also allow the 10th most fantasy points to wide receivers who are in the slot. And this is McConkey's game. And to take it even one step further, we all know that McConkey, like I had established, is in the slot most of the time. He's going to be lined up versus DB Marlon Humphrey. And the reason why this is important is if you look at the stat over here, he allows 0.35 fantasy points per route when in slot coverage. And this is where you want to really leverage McConkey because he's going to have a good matchup not only versus a terrible defense, but a defense that specifically doesn't line up well versus receivers in the slot. And then not only is this week a good matchup, but he also faces the Atlanta Falcons next week, who allowed the 4th most points to opposing wide receivers. All right, listen, we have 2 more players to go over if you haven't already done so. Most of you are not already subscribed, so if you could do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Let's go over these last 2 players. And this next player is going to be Cade Otton, tight end out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Since week 3, he has had 6 of 8 games where he had 8 targets or more. And what's been impressive is since that stretch, he's been the tight end 2 only behind Brock Bowers. And what's impressive is this season, among all tight ends, Cade Otton actually ranks 3rd in receptions, 3rd in targets, 4th in total touchdowns, and also is 2nd in red zone targets. And I'm looking beyond this week because the next 2 weeks he faces the Carolina Panthers as well as the Las Vegas Raiders. And both of these defenses actually allow the most points to opposing tight ends. So Cade Otton for me is someone that you should be targeting because he's going to be a solid option for you at the tight end position. Now, this last player that I'm going to be targeting is going to be Josh Downs from the Indianapolis Colts. And this has been a player that I have been really targeting, especially in dynasty formats. And he's been phenomenal because look, in the 9 games played this season, he's had 6 games with 9 plus targets. And during that 9-game stretch, he's had 7 games where he has had double-digit production. So he's been very efficient and very productive for this offense and for your fantasy teams. Check this stat out here from RotoViz. You can see here in 5 games with Anthony Richardson in the lineup for Josh Downs, he averages 14 points per game, 4 receptions and 60 targets, whereas with the 4 games without him, he's averaging 15.4 points per game, 7 receptions and 66 yards. So obviously a slight uptick, but you saw that even in the last 2 matchups, in one of those games he had Richardson back in the lineup as quarterback, he had a very tough matchup with Buffalo and the Jets. However, in those 2 games combined, he saw 15 targets, 12 receptions, 156 yards, and even even had a touchdown. What this is telling me is that now at this point, Downs is becoming someone that I can just rely on to have in my fantasy roster, albeit I'll still have managed expectations when it comes to the matchups. However, he's been showing that regardless of what the matchup is, he's going to be still effective for your lineups, and he's actually going to be facing a very favorable one. He's going to be facing the Detroit Lions, who actually allow the 9th most points to opposing wide receivers. And the reason why this is also important is because Josh Downs is 9th among all wide receivers in slot snaps, and very similar to what we went over with McConkey, he actually also is 5th among all wide receivers in target rate. And when you look at this screenshot here, you can see here that Amik Robinson from the Detroit Lions typically lines up against opposing wide receivers at the slot, and he actually allows a very low 0.3 fantasy points per route to opposing wide receivers. And this is very important because you can also see here that Josh Downs is 1st in route win rate among all wide receivers. Hey, thank you so much for making it to the very end of this video. Listen, do me a solid. If you got value in it, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and also check out some of these other videos that you can see here on the channel that'll help you out with your fantasy rosters. Best of luck to you in week 12. And in the meantime and in between time, take care. God bless. Peace.